Good afternoon. You are watching KBC Channel 1 live proceedings from Parliament buildings. And this afternoon, we expect the National Assembly and also the Senate to resume sittings after a one-week recess. And during this time, members of the National Assembly were in Nairobi for an induction training that took 5 days under the theme setting the stage for the 12th Parliament. And this was to enable them prepare for a smooth takeoff, enable them acquaint themselves with the legislation process, house practices and procedures and operations of Parliament. Members also did have a session on strategies on how to achieve work-life balance, and this is given the fact that being a member of Parliament at national level is no mean feat, and that there are certain societal expectations and demands placed on the office that members need to be aware of and need to know just how to blend that with their day-to-day lives. This afternoon, members shall be concluding debate on the President's address. It will be the fourth day of discussions, and we expect the question to be put. This is an address delivered on the 12th of September during the inauguration of the 12th Parliament. Quite a short and tight speech given by the President, during which he lauded members for their election, especially women members, and also calling upon them to ensure that they execute their mandate as per the Constitution, and even calling upon them to be on the lead when it comes to preaching peace and ensuring that there is stability and cohesiveness in the country. This afternoon, members will also be considering a motion on appointment of members to the Committee on Selection. This is a committee that will be chaired by the leader of Majority Party, and a number of members have been proposed for this committee from the Jubilee Coalition, which enjoys majority status, and it is 12 members to be exact. The Honorable Jimmy Angwenyi, Member of Parliament, Kitutu Chache North. The Honorable Benjamin Washiali, Member of Parliament, Mumias East, who is also the Majority Whip. Honorable Jude Njomo, Member of Parliament, Kiambu. Honorable Naisula Lesuda, Member of Parliament, Samburu West. Honorable Khatib Moshetani, Member of Parliament, Lunga Lunga. Honorable Ruweida Mohamed Obo, Member of Parliament, Lamu. Honorable David Kosing, Member of Parliament, Pokot South. Honorable David Ole Sankok, Member of Parliament, a nominated Member of Parliament, Honorable William Chepkut, Member of Parliament for Ainabkoi constituency. Honorable Sophia Abdinur, Member of Parliament, Ijara. Honorable John Kiaria Waweru, Member of Parliament, Dagoretti South. And Honorable Dr. Korei Lemein, Member of Parliament, Narok South. The House will be awaiting the appointment of 7 additional members from the minority party in the House, and that is the National Super Alliance Coalition, NASA. And it will be noted that NASA is also yet to submit nominees for the House Business Committee that was already decided upon, and even names of their choice for various positions of leadership in the House. According to Standing Orders 172 of the National Assembly, this Committee on Selection is expected to nominate members to serve in committees, and this is with the exception of membership of the House Business Committee and the Committee of Appointments, and this selection is expected to be done within 10 days on the assembly of a new House. It is a live broadcast brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. My name is Vereso Mwanga. I do welcome you to follow the proceedings. Good afternoon.
Proceed. Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Leader Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, September 26, 2017. The annual report and financial statement of the Judicial Service Commission for the financial year 2015-2016. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year that ended 30th June 2016. National Museum of Kenya, Consolidated Bank of Kenya, Occupational Therapy and Health Fund, Water Resource Management Authority, National Environmental Management Authority, Public Complaints Committee on Environment, Office of the Attorney General and Department of Justice, State Corporation Appeal Tribunal, the National Assembly, Egerton University. 3, Mr. Speaker, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year that ended 30th June 2016, and the certificate therein. Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat that members whose constituency I will mention is important they pick a copy of these audited reports from the Auditor General for them to see. Constituency number 1 is Kikuyu constituency, Arabai constituency, Taveta constituency, Kinango constituency, Siolo South constituency, Mount Elgon constituency, Subukia constituency, Baringo South constituency, Jomvu constituency, Kitui East constituency, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Next order. Order number 6, notices of motion. Leader Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that cognizant of the report of the Select Committee on Regional Integration of the 11th Parliament on the ratification of the East African Community Protocol on Privileges and Immunities, and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, this House approves the ratification of protocol to operationalize the East African Community Protocol on Privilege and Immunities. Honorable Speaker, 2, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that cognizant of the report of the Select Committee on Regional Integration of the 11th Parliament on the ratification of the protocol to operationalize the extended jurisdiction of the East African Court of Justice, and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, this House approves the ratification of the protocol to give effect to the extended jurisdiction of the East Africa Court of Justice. Third, Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion that cognizant of the report of the Select Committee on Regional Integration of the 11th Parliament on the ratification of the Nile Basin Cooperative Framework Agreement and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, this House approves the ratification of the Nile Basin Cooperative Framework. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts Sessional Paper number 1 of 2017 on the Kenya Health Policy for the period 2014 to 2030 from the Ministry of Health, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, September 13th, 2017.
Yes, next.
Speaker, finally, I have my own adjournment motion. And Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I give rise to give a notice of motion in line, Mr. Speaker, and seek the support of the House on a motion of adjournment of the House to discuss urgent matters and issues relating to the 2017 general election. Thank you.
I'm sure, honourable members, you may take back your seats. I'm sure, standing order number 33, after the induction last week, standing order number 33 must be very fresh in our minds. No wonder everybody was upstanding in support of the proposed notice of motion. I want to confirm that the leader majority submitted that written notification for the motion within the required period of 2 hours before this sitting. And indeed, as shown by the support, it is clear to me that it is indeed an urgent matter of national importance. I therefore direct and order that debate on the motion will take place after conclusion of the business appearing as order number 9 on the order paper. Debate will commence after conclusion of the business appearing as order number 9 on the order paper. We may proceed.
Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, motion, debate on the presidential address, 4th day. Question to be put.
Honourable members, debate on this motion was concluded on Tuesday, 12th of September 2017, and therefore what remains is for the question to be put, which I hereby do. That the thanks of the House be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in the address of the President. Sorry, honourable members. Debate on this motion was concluded on Thursday, the week before last, not on 12th. And therefore, I put the question that the thanks of the House be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in the address of the President delivered on Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Order number 9, motion, appointment of members to the Committee on Selection.
Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, following our parliamentary group meeting, I want to indulge you that we step down this matter until when the House Business Committee will feel it fit. As members of the Jubilee Coalition, we have a discussion on this matter. So I really want you to indulge you to step it down.
Very well. Again, I wish to confirm that the Leader of Majority has communicated to me that he would be requesting that the business appearing as order number 9 be stood down to such other date as the House Business Committee, after consultation with his other colleagues, have decided. The business therefore is stepped down. Next order. Very well. Like I indicated that the motion by the Leader of the Majority Party on a motion of adjournment to discuss a matter of definite urgent national and of national importance was to take place after conclusion of the business appearing as order number 9. That business having been stood down, I therefore call upon the Leader of the Majority Party to move his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 33, subsection 1, I seek leave of the House to move this motion of adjournment for the purpose of discussing a matter, an urgent matter relating to the outcome of the presidential vote in the 2017 general election and other connected matters. Mr. Speaker, following the Supreme Court judgment, there have been broad discourse in the country on the next election. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge you to refrain members of the House not to discuss the conduct of individual judicial officers and the judiciary, and that's not the intention of this motion, but to discuss the way forward in as far as the 26th of October repeat presidential elections is concerned. Honorable Speaker, the only means or ways for us to discuss this, and the court, Mr. Speaker, was very, very categorical. The Supreme Court made some very distinct categorical statements. One of it, Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, invalidated the presidential elections that were conducted on the 8th of August 2017. Two, in accordance with the Constitution again, the Supreme Court asked that and mandated that IBC must conduct a repeat elections, not within 40 days, not within 50 days, but within 60 days. And the 60th day, Mr. Speaker, will be the 1st of November 2017. And Mr. Speaker, following all this, there is an atmosphere where our colleagues are saying they will boycott elections. Speaker, it's not the first time I'm hearing of people boycotting elections. In 2007, some of the candidates who stood against me boycotted elections, but I ended up being a member of Parliament for Dugis then. And Mr. Speaker, the date is fast approaching for the first fresh elections, and I want to confirm to the country that our PG this morning as Jubilee was more on training of our members as chief agents and on how to conduct the repeat presidential elections. So today, all of us either are chief agents, either we are going to be in charge of the whole team that will be in charge of that election. So, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, I want to refer to Article 140, subsection 3. And, Mr. Speaker, it says, or provides that a fresh elections following the nullification by the Supreme Court of the election result shall be held within 60 days. Mr. Speaker, that is a provision of the Constitution, Article 140, subsection 3. And in this regard, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution makes it mandatory, makes it clear that elections must, and Mr. Speaker, I repeat, must be held within the prescribed timelines. Speaker, I am a leader in this country. At least I am serving my third term. And you know, when I see leadership in this country saying there will be no election, I ask myself the same fundamental question the Deputy President always asks on TV. When you say there will be no elections, the question that comes next is, as who? Who are you? You are not IEBC. You are not the Supreme Court. You are just like any other contestant. You are just like any other political party. And the Speaker, the same people, you know, keep on lecturing us about impunity, about violation of the Constitution, about us taking Kenya back. Speaker, those are the people who are taking Kenya back. And the Speaker, let us be very, very candid today. Very, very candid. In 2007, the same gentleman lost to President Mwai Kibaki. Unfortunately, that time I was on the other side of that gentleman. But I want to confess and be on answer today that we lost that election. We lost that election. I was a very senior member of ODM then. But that, as it may be, that gentleman said, for me to win the next election, we must remove Kivutu-led commission. And Mr. Speaker, this house was used as a rubber stamp to remove the late Kivutu and his team. Through the National Accord arrangement, through a commission called the Kriegler Commission. Speaker, in 2013, the same gentleman again lost to a commission in which he single-handedly appointed. And I want to speak for Chairman Isaac Hassan. Chairman Isaac Hassan, because it was the coalition government, Chairman Isaac Hassan was an appointee of Raila Odinga. But again, when he lost in 2013, Mr. Speaker, he said, for me to win 2017, we must remove Isaac Hassan and his commission. Mr. Speaker, again, through some joint committee led by Senator James Orengo and Senator Mutula Kilonzo, and you are, I'm sure the members who are in the 11th Parliament, and you as our Speaker, we were taken through a route by the same man. And he said, we must remove that commission. We removed that commission. We brought the so-called technology to the Election Act. And Mr. Speaker, on the 8th of August 2017, the same gentleman again lost by 1.5 million votes. And because he knows now, for him to win the repeat election, Mr. Speaker, he is now telling us that we must have another printer that will print the ballot boxes. That we will have another, we must change the company that deals with the technology. That we must change Chiloba, Chepukati, and all the team. Speaker, this gentleman knows that he doesn't have the numbers. And the Speaker, elections are won by numbers. And because he doesn't have the numbers, he wants, and he doesn't have a strategy, according to the Deputy Speaker here, who knows the guy, because he was also rigged in 2007 ODM nomination. That's how he lost the parliament in the 10th Parliament in favor of ZK Choriot. Mr. Speaker. Speaker, he says the Constitution is not perfect. IEBC Act is not perfect. The men and women working at our Electoral Commission are not good unless I am declared the President of the Republic of Kenya. That is when the Constitution will be very good. And Mr. Speaker, we want to tell him from the floor of this House, those of us who won in this election, that enough is enough. That Kenya can move. And the Speaker, so absurd, because he's used to, joining government, seeking power through, corners. He doesn't use the main highway. This man, once again, and his cohorts want to interpret the Constitution to fit their own way. Mr. Speaker, Article 142 of the Constitution provides that the President shall hold office. And I want to speak to the representative of UNDP and the person in charge of UN offices in Nairobi, Madam Saleh, that Kenya is not a banana republic. The only place where UN can conduct elections is in countries like Haiti, Liberia. Speaker, the PFM Act outlaws, the Procurement Act outlaws IEBC to circumvent the law and use a UN body. Mr. Speaker, in next week we will have a committee of this House called the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee that oversees IEBC, DPP, the judiciary, and many other independent institutions. Speaker, Chebukati is a renowned lawyer. He should not go that route. That is unconstitutional, and any election conducted with proceeds or support from a UN within the context of the Kenyan Constitution is illegal. He should not even contemplate. He should not even wait for a letter from the National Treasury. He cannot dare, just because he wants to satisfy the ego and the whims of few individuals who are power hungry. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on the provisions of the law, and hence exist no speck or figment of any imagination on the electoral process in this country, including fresh elections. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, John Parchman, the 15th President of the United States, Mr. Speaker, as I read last night, he said, the ballot box is the surest arbiter for solving disputes among free men. Mr. Speaker, if Raila Odinga and cohorts are saying that we are victims, our election was stolen, then you have been given another opportunity on the 26th of October to come and win elections. Why are you scared? You have been given another opportunity. Mr. Speaker, in the words of our...
Kwa hayo Mheshimiwa Spika, napongeza kiongozi ya wengi katika bunge kwa hoja aliyoleta leo Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu kutoka uchaguzi iharamishwe tarehe 1 mwezi ya 9, kuna habari kila aina katika nchi ya Kenya Mheshimiwa Spika. Mpaka wengine wamekwenda kutishia taifa, wanasema nchi ya Kenya itavurugika karibuni. Mheshimiwa Spika, kifungu ya 140 ya katiba Mheshimiwa Spika inasema itakapoharamishwa uchaguzi ya rais kwa muda wa siku 60, uchaguzi ingine ifanywe Mheshimiwa Spika. Sasa siku hizi babu ameanza Mheshimiwa Spika. Akiamuka leo hataki Safan Mofon, akiamuka kesho hataki Chebukati, kesho kutwa hataki Chiluba, siku ni 60 Mheshimiwa Spika. Wapende wapendao na uchukie wale unayowachukia. Lakini siku sheria inataka, kifungu 140 ya sheria ya Kenya inasema kura uchaguzi ifanywe kwa muda wa siku 60. Sasa babu, kama humtaki Chiloba, lini tutatangaza? Lini tutaalika application? Lini tutaajiri mtu? Lini IBC iweze kufanya uchaguzi? Mbona leo unajitia chongo babu? Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria ni sheria na sheria iko wazi. Akipenda aliwario sheria iko wazi, na akichukia babu sheria iko wazi bado. Kifungu 142 ya sheria inasema, katiba inasema, Mheshimiwa Spika, rais akichaguliwa anaanza kazi pale anapoapishwa na anatoka kwa hiyo ofisi siku ile rais mwingine ataapishwa. Kwa hivyo kuna kuapishwa kuwili kwa mujibu ya kifungu 142 ya katiba, kuna kuapishwa kuwili. Kwa wale wanaota pale nje, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanaota wakisema taifa ya Kenya tutafanya maandamano na tutaleta vurugu na tutaleta mbinu yoyote, siku 60 ipite alafu tuende tugawanye serikali ya nusu mkate. Ni kwa bahati mbaya kifungu 142 imeleta suluhu kwa hiyo matatizo. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nimesoma kifungu 168 ya katiba ya Kenya. Inasema nini juu ya wakati unatetezi juu ya jaji ya mahakama kuu? Sheria iko wazi. Kifungu inatambua uhuru ya mahakama. 168 imeweka kiwango fulani ya vurugu ya katiba ndio uweze kupeleka tetezi, na hiyo sheria iko wazi. Lengo yangu si huko, Mheshimiwa Spika. Yaliyotokea tuna dukuduku naye, tumekubali huku ya mahakama, lakini tuna dukuduku juu yake. Suhulisho ya hii dukuduku ni nini? Mheshimiwa Spika, kifungu ya 88(4) inaambia tume huru ya uchaguzi kwa siku 60 walete hiyo kura na waisimamie wao. Ukiamuka asubuhi useme unamtaka nani, babu anasema hataki huyu, babu anamtaka huyu, babu afute huyu, babu anataka kampuni hii. Sheria iko wazi, siku ni 60, inayosimamia hiyo uchaguzi ni IEBC, wala sio NASA ama sio babu. Mheshimiwa Spika, wengi wanataka kuchangia juu ya hii hoja iliyoko mbele yetu. Nimesimama kuunga mkono na nimesimama kupongeza kiongozi ya wengi bungeni kwa kuleta hii kitu, hii hoja. Mheshimiwa, huko nje kuna vitisho kila aina. Ili tuondoe hii vitisho, IEBC walete hii kura tarehe 26, tufunge hii hesabu na tuende nyumbani. Hii maneno ya babu imetuchokesha kichwa. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honourable members, remember it's a motion of adjournment, and therefore propose the question, which is that pursuant to provisions of Standing Order number 33, this House do now adjourn. For the new members, it doesn't mean that the House rises. No, it doesn't. It does not mean that. The member for Kikuyu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity, and I rise to support the motion for adjournment to discuss this matter of urgent national importance, Mr. Speaker. And suffice to say, Mr. Speaker, the majority speaker while moving this motion has alluded to the fact that there are those who seek to establish governments other than in ways stipulated in our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And I wish to draw the House's attention to Article 3 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir. And if you allow me to read, it says that every person has an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend this Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And that is what we seek today, to do today through this motion, to defend and uphold this Constitution, Mr. Speaker. 3(2) of the same Constitution, Mr. Speaker, says that any attempt to establish a government otherwise than in compliance with this Constitution is unlawful. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that many of us, and indeed Kenyans at large, can read through the lenses of what the Honorable former Prime Minister and his cohorts in NASA are planning to do. Mr. Speaker, it is quite clear that they intend to use violence and intimidation as a tool to stop the elections scheduled for the 26th of October from happening. And thereafter, Mr. Speaker, moved to the Supreme Court after those elections to go and plead under Article 81 and Article 140 of the Constitution that the elections were not free and fair because they were riddled with violence and intimidation. Intimidation and violence that they will have orchestrated before and during the election. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must ask that all state agencies dealing with security must ensure that the country continues to be secure and that every voter, every Kenyan, anywhere in this country is able to vote without intimidation and without violence, Mr. Speaker. And we must also add, Mr. Speaker, that he who seeks equity must come with clean hands. Therefore, I am hoping, Mr. Speaker, sir, that even our friends in the Supreme Court and in the judiciary today are not blind to what is happening, that they shall not be blind to those who will come to seek equity in the petition that they seek to file after the 26th elections and seek to nullify the elections of the 26th of October on the pretext that there was violence. And Mr. Speaker, as has been said by those who spoke before me, it is quite clear that there are those of us, Mr. Speaker, and particularly one person who, if it was allowed, Mr. Speaker, if only it were possible under this judiciary, maybe a Kenyan would have moved to court tomorrow and maybe ask the courts to check on the senility of this old man. Because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot have a country where one person seeks to get into government through other ways. The majority leader has alluded to the various means that he used in 2007. And I want to remind the majority speaker, even prior to 2007, in 1982, the former prime minister sought through a military coup to get into government. That failed. In I think 2000, after the 2002 elections, Mr. Speaker, or 1997 elections, Mr. Speaker, you will remember that the former prime minister got into government through the infamous merger or marriage of the then NDP and KANU. And you can remember the disaster that then caused to KANU. And he abandoned his colleagues in the opposition. So let me also take this opportunity to advise our good friend and our fellow Christian, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. My friend, you will be abandoned at the 11th hour should this guy find an opportunity to get in government. But we must also make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that this new constitution, unlike those days, under this new constitution, we cannot establish a government in any other way other than that is provided in this constitution, as I have spelled out in Article 3, subsection 2 of the Constitution. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must, as a House and as Kenyans, stand firm to uphold this constitution and ensure that the sanctity of the ballot and the votes counted in the ballot box, Mr. Speaker, is what counts at the end of the day. And therefore, I'll also take this opportunity to ask the House that should the time come when we need to speak to the amendments that were even alluded to by the Supreme Court, more so on the provisions, on expounding on the provisions of Section 44A, Mr. Speaker, on the use of a complementary system to transmit results and identify voters, that this House does rise to the occasion that time and ensure that we protect the sanctity of the vote, of the ballot, that Kenyans go and vote without necessarily being held down by technicalities and all the other things that have been raised by the Supreme Court. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Member for North Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do support the motion as moved by the Leader of Majority. Mr. Speaker, sir, as Parliament, we have a duty and a mandate to deliberate on any issue of national importance and resolve it for the great good of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, invalidation of presidential election in our country is a matter of major significance to this country. As a result, as a House, I think we have a duty to really resolve the matter we can or contribute to a solution that may be necessary to take this country forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's imperative for this country to have the elections within 60 days as directed by the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, sir, Supreme Court did raise some issues, and those issues are being resolved by the institutions of this country, which have been mandated by our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, IBC, through its own administrative mechanisms, is already looking in ways of tightening the process to ensure fair and transparent elections. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, sir, as a House, we are also seized of some of these issues, and hopefully very soon, without anticipating debate, Mr. Speaker, sir, we'll be looking at some of these amendments to the electoral laws of this country and see what we can do to ensure that we have fair, transparent election in our country. So, Speaker, sir, since institutions are working day and night to ensure we have fair and transparent elections, so, Speaker, sir, mass demonstrations, street protests will not be a solution. So, Speaker, sir, the sovereignty and the peace of this nation matters. Mr. Speaker, sir, the economy of this country matters a lot for the well-being of this nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, the life of each and every Kenyan matters, and we cannot allow, as a House, Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenyans to use other means, Mr. Speaker, sir, to look for elective positions or the presidency of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, let's call upon all Kenyans to really cherish our Constitution, use what's provided for within our Constitution, within our laws, to resolve issues that are of concern, whether we are in opposition or whether we are in the ruling party. Mr. Speaker, sir, and as a government, I think our government has a duty to safeguard life and property of its citizens. I think any government anywhere in the world, that's what its salt, what its name of a government, must ensure that the lives and the properties of Kenyans in all corners of this country are protected. Mr. Speaker, as a result, our government have a duty to ensure that the lives and properties of Kenyans are fully protected. Mr. Speaker, I think it's also incumbent upon us as members of Parliament, in both houses, Senate and the National Assembly, to do to go with speed, with the necessary efficiency and effectiveness necessary to amend those electoral laws that are found to be somewhat ambiguous, which have really brought us to where we are today. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those few remarks, I support the motion.
Well, just to remind members again that this being a motion and standing order number 33, every other member contributing is entitled to a maximum of 5 minutes. Honorable Soipan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to begin by commending my leader, the Honorable Duale, for bringing up the motion of adjournment on this very, very important and critical issue that is of concern to Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, in exercise of our responsibility as members of the National Assembly, this is an issue that we cannot ignore at this particular time when Kenyans have been subjected to unnecessary anxiety, unnecessary uncertainties, Mr. Speaker, which are occasioning Kenyans to unnecessary anguish, Mr. Speaker, and anxiety, as I have said. Mr. Speaker, the matter at hand concerns largely the unprecedented ruling of our Supreme Court, which I wish to join many members, many Kenyans, led by His Excellency the President Uhuru, in saying that even as a lawyer, Mr. Speaker, and a law-abiding citizen of Kenya, I do not agree with the ruling of the Supreme Court, but in my standing as a law-abiding Kenyan, I respect it. Mr. Speaker, we have the Supreme Court ruling which has invalidated the presidential elections and mandated us to go back to the ballot within 60 days. I think that is crystal clear for anybody, Mr. Speaker, to say that within 60 days, as stipulated in our Constitution, we should go back to the ballot, and we respect that decision, like I have said. Mr. Speaker, but we have a very incessant process going on, which I may call theatrics, which is what is occasioning a lot of anxiety to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, when you hear members of the opposition focusing on anticipated happenings after the 60 days. Why would anybody be concerning themselves with after 60 days, Mr. Speaker? Yet, the law is very clear in stating that the election will be done or should be done or shall be done within 60 days. Mr. Speaker, we can only imagine that these are people who have some, undercut dealings, and I can see our able chair looking at me very sternly, because when you talk about after 60 days, and yet we are within the 60 days within which we should conduct the election, and we have a date given by IEBC legally, then, Mr. Speaker, we must begin to question the motive, the intention of the people who are talking about extrajudicial or extra-legal issues that we are not concerned with as Kenyans as of now. Mr. Speaker, any law-abiding citizen and anybody who may want to consider themselves a leader of this country should be concerning themselves with a process, a legal process, which will give due sanctity to a process where a voter wakes up in the morning, goes to a polling station, makes a decision to say, this is the president I want, or this is the leader I want. Mr. Speaker, I think even as members of the 12th Parliament, this is what we need to focus on, Mr. Speaker, that after a voter has woken up, voted, and decided on who their leader should be, questions about technicalities, about passwords, about servers, Mr. Speaker, those should be secondary to the decision that a Kenyan voter has already done. Mr. Speaker, and speaking to the issue, again, which is being, flouted around, with people wanting to insinuate that we have a temporary incumbency. Mr. Speaker, again, a temporary incumbency of the president does not exist in Kenya right now. Mr. Speaker, anybody with a clear, good, and understanding reading of the Constitution knows that after the elections of the president have been declared null and void, we are not waiting for anybody to be sworn in as president, therefore giving us a period of temporary incumbency. We have not done any elections as per the Supreme Court ruling. We have a president in place. We have 60 days within which I wish to urge everybody, all Kenyans, to focus on to make sure that when we go back to the ballot on the 26th, every Kenyan is given an opportunity to make their decision, and we sanctify that process. And should there be need, and there is a lot of need, even from the reading of the Supreme Court reading, for us to go back to our electoral laws to make the necessary amendments to make sure that we sanctify the decision of the Kenyan voter and not, concern ourselves with technicalities which begin to bring confusion and putting into doubt a decision made by a Kenyan to choose a leader of their choice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I wish to support.
Member for Juja, who has occupied the seat of the leader of minority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is good to be here on this seat of minority leader. And again, I have the chairman here, Honorable Bandi, next to me. Mr. Speaker, it is true what my fellow members of Parliament have just said. And even looking at John Badi here, we have said in the 11th Parliament and now 12th Parliament that in this Parliament we don't have with opposition or any other parties that they call when they are out there. We have minority and majority. We are one and same, and we should be very, very careful when we talk about our country. Mr. Speaker, when you see what has been happening in this country, and now, Mr. Speaker, when we are here talking about what we need this country to be on, a time like now, Mr. Speaker, even in Juja constituency, which is a cosmopolitan, Mr. Speaker, we have so many children now who are not going through to school because of bursaries, because they are from very poor families in the coffee farms and other places. when we find people talking about issues that definitely are made in this parliament. Laws are made in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, and that is what we want to follow. But when you hear people talking about outside the parliament, talking about what they want this country to run, and this is not the Kenyan laws that we have, Honorable Speaker, we find that we are not moving this country to where it should be. Honorable Speaker, when I look at last time when we were ending the 11th Parliament, and the way we spoke about what we really need this country to be, Mr. Speaker, if you look, my friend there, Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, who has been, I don't know, since almost independent, running for presidential candidate, and to me, I don't say it's wrong, but Mr. Speaker, when he speaks about the Kenyan laws, and he has his members of parliament who can come and amend the law or rectify the law through parliament, there is nowhere else, Mr. Speaker, apart from this parliament, not even in the Senate, you can amend laws. You can only do it here in the National Assembly, but you can't do it anywhere else. And Mr. Speaker, when we go out there and show Kenyans that now we are in two different countries, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't go on well, because I've listened to many Kenyans outside there when they hear us speaking, and we should be one team looking at what we should do for this country because of the children behind and the generation coming up. To the chairman here, who is my very good friend, and who knows that I know even to speak the Luo friendly and Luya friendly, it doesn't matter what tribe you are from. The only thing that we can do in this country is to unite this country so that in the future, Mr. Speaker, they can remember us and say that this is Kenya that has unity. But now, Mr. Speaker, we are trying to say after 60 days that there will be no elections. And this is words from people who are not even following Kenyan's constitution. And I'm happy here because now the chairman will say, it is true, it is in the constitution after 60 days, and that is the people who want to run for presidency, and we know who and who this time around. We have two candidates who are there, and let's now face the people and move on so that this country stands where it should be. Mr. Speaker, I thank when I see even now members seated here thinking about the future of this country. Today we are honorable members just because we are elected from each constituency. But after that, Mr. Speaker, do we care about this country that God has given us? Are we there to make this country look different from other countries in Africa? Why are we fighting for things that can't happen? Mr. Speaker, I also look at what is happening and look at how people are talking about it. Mr. Speaker, a young boy who I know some times back, and I know even he got some bursary funds some times back, abusing even people through, and you're an honorable member of parliament, and you want to abuse even a mother of a country who fought for independence in this country, where the husband was jailed because of this country, and you want to abuse and abuse him.
Member for Kitutu Church North, who also is the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this important motion. Mr. Speaker, first, I support the motion as given by our Majority Leader. Mr. Speaker, we have and Mr. Speaker, we have failed in our role if we allow this country to degenerate into chaos. And Mr. Speaker, when I talk about that aspect of violence, I'm talking from a community. If there were violence in this country, the community which you suffer most is the community where I come from. Because we live everywhere in every corner of this country, where we once look for ourselves, to provide for ourselves. We don't depend on manna from heaven. We don't depend on handouts from the government. We work for our livelihoods. Therefore, we are every corner of this country. Last time we had violence, a lot of our people were killed. A lot of our people lost their properties. And we will not allow, even if it means we take up arms, we will not allow our people to be killed again in this country. Mr. Speaker, we have got a rule of the last election on the 8th of August. A judgment was made which annulled that election. But in that judgment, the second aspect of it was that we must hold elections, fresh elections, within 60 days. And those elections will be conducted by IEBC. Now I find it strange that our leaders in the opposition can accept part of their judgment. That's the judgment they were now nullifying the results. But they don't want to accept the part of this judgment which says we should hold elections within 60 days, and that those elections will be conducted by IEBC. The same judge, the same Supreme Court, clearly stated, did not find any fault to any individual. There's no single individual Mr. Speaker, sir, they say also that we must respect independent entities in this country, like the judiciary. But they don't respect IEBC as an independent institution. What is these double standards? What is these double standards, Mr. Speaker? The IEBC is the only one, is the only institution in this country which can conduct the elections. And you cannot tell it when it's going to hold in elections, so long as they are within the law, within 60 days. So they cannot say we cannot have elections as if they are the ones to conduct the elections. When they say we cannot have elections, they are just telling us we will cause violence. And this government, I blame it to accept for those kind of violent demands to be made on the people of Kenya. The other side is saying they talk for the people of Kenya. But are we not the people of Kenya ourselves? We represent the majority of people of Kenya. So they can have their say. We must have our way. And our way is to have elections come 26th of October. If they don't want to participate, well and good. In Kenya, we don't have a law which forces you to go and vote. You're not like Australia. Mr. Speaker, but before we conclude, Mr. Speaker, I will ask this House to enact a law that we go to manual elections. If Germany can do it, who are we who cannot do it when we seek assistance from Germany? I would suggest that this House embarks on enacting a law that allows manual elections.
Member for Kajiado North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt in my mind that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta won this election, and that is common to many people. And actually, even ignoring the forms that were not signed, we could have given a margin of error maybe of about 5% and still conclude this was a fair election, 95% confidence level. Yes. Therefore, what I know, and I think, and that is what is happening, there was a scheme to deny the people of Kenya the president that they want. And that is why in the opposition side, the other side, if you remember very well, when they were preparing for the election, they were saying the IBC will tarry, they will also tarry. They will announce, they will also announce. Because they knew they had a scheme, and that's why they were saying they have a turning center so that they can get from the PEO, they could get the correct forms and the wrong forms that are not signed to the IBC because they were maybe expecting the same thing to happen. Mr. Speaker, what I tend to think the leader of the opposition did, according to him, is he staged a coup, and he thinks he succeeded, and that is he's very hard moving to the next stage of demonstration. Mr. Speaker, he is trying to force constitutional disorder in this country, and that is why he's calling for demonstration every Tuesday. But I want to tell him this country is more than him. He has been tolerated so much, and actually at the end of the day, you will find that he is radicalizing so many people. By the way, if you hear that young man, member of parliament, the way he talked to our president, you can see somebody who is radicalized. The way people like members of parliament like Sibarati are talking, the governor of Mombasa, these are people who are really radicalized. What we are doing, we are giving a very big room to keep on radicalizing other Kenyans. And at the end of the day, we'll have a very bad country. Mr. Speaker, I think he's acting like a terrorist in this country, because at the end of the day, by calling this kind of demonstration, some people will be killed. Many people have been killed from the same movement. So I tend to think this is the right time to deal with the issue once and for all. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority explained to us that he was in ODM that time when they organized on how to remove Kivuitu, who was the chairman. And that was not enough. The person who became the chair, Isaac Hassan, you remember very well, the person who was to be the chair was Ole Kaparo, who was to be the chair of the ABC. But he preferred Isaac Hassan, and also he put the CEO to be James Oswango, somebody from his area, so that they can move, maybe they can do Ukarabati and win the election. But when they failed to do that, then they were kicked, they were shown the door. I remember very well last year when we had a PG in State House, we all agreed that Honorable Raila Odinga is trying to move this country to the same crisis. But yet we accepted him to remove that commission. Now again, since he did not succeed, he wants this commission again to go. Now we wonder, what are we heading to? Mr. Speaker, I think he's requesting for something that is impossible. About 7 months ago, that's when we put this commission. And actually, because I was in the Public Accounts Committee last Parliament, we called the current CEO of IBC. We asked him, what problem are you facing? And one of the problems he was facing, he was preparing a very major election, and yet he's inducting new commissioners. Now, if you remove him as the current CEO who is experienced, and you are left with the people who are not experienced, then the election will not be conducted in a fair manner. So I tend to think this is the right time. We become hard also, and if it means also members of parliament from the Jubilee side demonstrating to say we have to go with this commission and make this election by 26, I think that is a better way to go instead of keeping quiet throughout and then we lose a country. Thank you very much. I want to support.
Member for Yembe Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, let me start by thanking Honorable Duale for bringing this adjournment motion, because it's something which is touching on the very nerve of our country, and especially the current situation which is there today. It's not making anything move. Even the people in the rural areas, even the old mothers in the rural areas, they know there's a problem in Kenya, and they can feel it and tell something is wrong. Mr. Speaker, as this house is a house of rules, also this country has got a constitution which we must all respect, which we have all sworn to defend, from the president to the common mwananchi, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, we cannot let a few people just take advantage of the same constitution to bring anarchy in this country or to bring things at a standstill. Mr. Speaker, I believe the Supreme Court is the supreme authority, or the supreme is the highest law office in this country, and the Constitution says that once the Supreme Court has ruled on anything, we need to respect the same. Be you, if you are the aggrieved or the complainant, and therefore, whatever the Supreme Court said, our president agreed, and I also expect his opponent to also respect the same and give the same constitution time to do what it was supposed to do. Because if it was in the 60 days, and we are yet to get to the 60 days, but before those 60 days are over, the same candidates is running up and down in the country, demonstrating, calling upon people to do this and that. It doesn't add well to the country. Give this law, this constitution a chance, and forget shiny shows and other things, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Imeru, we say that when the boy is going to be circumcised, he doesn't choose the circumciser. So if you are a candidate, you should not choose who is going to start, to present over the elections. There is somebody which brought in Chebukati and his team. The itself is the one which has put that IEBC into place. Why do you want to micromanage that IEBC and you are a candidate yourself? You are a candidate and you want to micromanage the institution which wants to run the election against the other candidate. What about if the other candidate says the same? Are we going to take this country anywhere? We are taking the country to the dogs. It is my humble request to our opponents, the other side. I used to be there, but that place was not very good. That's why I moved out of them, because they never compromise, and there's somebody there who feels that he is Mr. Know Everything. And if you are Mr. Know Everything, and this country is made up of 40 million people, then you are wrong. Then you are wrong. You should also give other people a chance to give their views. And the people should not just be following you because you are there. They should be following you because of your ideologies, and they also should be respected because they also think. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I strongly support the motion and tell our brothers and sisters in NASA, let them not just follow their master blindly. This country does not belong to one person. It belongs to all of us, and we are worried and we are not happy, but you won't let it go. And I pray for peace in this country, and those who think that we will go otherwise, they are mistaken and they are wrong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kipkelion East.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Ningependa kushukuru kiongozi ya wengi hapa bungeni kwa kuleta hii mswada, Bwana Spika. Hii mswada siku ya leo ni ya maana sana, na mimi nataka kusema kwamba hii maneno inaendelea kwa nchi. Haitakikani sisi tukiwa bunge tujifanye ya kwamba sisi hatujui ni nani analeta hii shida. Hii shida ni kwa sababu moja tu, kwa sababu mtu fulani hajashinda uchaguzi. Na huyo mtu fulani ni huyu mjamaa anajiita, saa zingine anajiita yeye alikuwa anaitwa Gwambo, akabadilisha akakuja akaitwa baba, sijui baba bandia. Sasa juzi amejibadilisha tena ni Joshua, sijui Joshua bandia pia. Alafu baadaye amebadilika amekuwa kompyuta, sijui yeye ni kifaranga. Sasa Bwana Spika, nchi kama hii haiwezi endeshwa namna hiyo. Lazima wananchi wa Kenya wajue kwamba nchi ni yetu na nchi ni yetu wote, sio mtu mmoja. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, sisi tunataka kusema hivi. Mambo ya kuitisha kwamba ati sijui kompyuta ifunguliwe iangaliwe ndani. Mimi nataka kusema hivi. Bunge tusijifanya kwamba tunataka kubadilisha sheria na tunabadilisha nusu-nusu. Tubadilishe sheria, tuseme ya kwamba uchaguzi ya Kenya tuibadilishe irudi vile iko. Tusijifanya kwamba ati tunafanya uchaguzi ya kompyuta sijui digital. Na si digital. Unakuja kwa kompyuta, unaguza kompyuta. Unashika karatasi, unaandika kwa mkono yako, unaweka kwa sanduku kwa mkono yako. Alafu baadaye, ati baada ya kupiga kura tunaambiwa ati hiyo uchaguzi yako inawekwa ndani ya kompyuta ndio ipite hewani mpaka boma. Tunataka hiyo karatasi tuijaze, hiyo inaitwa 34B, Bwana Spika. Na tuilete moja kwa moja mpaka boma. Tuhesabu kama zamani. Alafu hii maneno ya kusema kompyuta, hatujaenda kompyuta, Bwana Spika. Tunataka tubadilishe sheria hii bunge. Tusibadilishe nusu, tubadilishe tuende ile uchaguzi inaitwa ya maandishi. Ulete karatasi hiyo mpaka boma, tuhesabu kura, mambo ya kompyuta ipotee. Mambo ya kompyuta ipotee. Kama nchi ya German, kama nchi ya Ujerumani, Bwana Spika, ni nchi imejitawala miaka yote. Ni nchi imeenda mbali kwa mambo ya makompyuta hizi. na wamerudi wenyewe wakasema hatutaki kompyuta. Kama nchi ya Amerika juzi, wakati huyu Trump alikuwa anashindana na Clinton, ilikuwa na shida ya kompyuta. Sisi ni nani? Sisi ni watu wenye tunakuwa watumwa wa huyu mtu anaitwa Raila. Sisi hatutaki hiyo maneno. Sisi turudi tutengeneze sheria yenye itaokoa nchi. Nchi vile tunaanza kuangalia saa hii, wale wanabiashara wale wako Kenya wanangojea nchi irudi kama kawaida ni wengi. Lakini kuna jamaa wanakimbia hapa kwa barabara hapa, ati fulani aondolewe kazi, ati ndio akuja ashinde. Hiyo haiwezekani, Bwana Spika. Sisi tunataka kusema nchi hii tunataka irudi ifanye kazi kama kawaida, na wananchi wa kawaida huko kwetu. Mimi Bwana Spika, mimi natoka Kericho. Watu wa Kericho wanataka kulima, watu wa Kericho wanataka kuchuna chai, watu wa Kericho wanataka kufuna mahindi, watu wa Kericho wanatuambia hii maneno gani naendelea, na tunataka nchi irudi kawaida. Kwa hivyo sisi tunataka kupiga kura, na wananchi wa Kenya wote wanajua ni nani watampigia kura, wanajua ni nani walimpigia. Kotini haikusema Uhuru Kenyatta hakushinda. Hakuna siku hata moja wamesema namna hiyo. Walisema tu ati karatasi fulani haikuwa imewekwa sijui nambari fulani. Na juzi tumesikia hata hiyo karatasi yote ilikuwa sawa, Bwana Spika. Sisi tunataka kusema turudi kwa uchaguzi, mambo ya mkate nusu hakuna. Na hatuwezi kujifanya hapa ya kwamba hatujui ya kwamba jamaa huyu anataka mkate nusu. Wale wanatembea na Raila Odinga, nataka kuwaambia leo, Mudavadi na Kalonzo wajitayarishe. Raila Odinga aliitisha maandamano, alafu baada ya siku moja akasema ati yeye hakuitisha maandamano, anataka kuenda kando ndio wengine waingie kwa shimo wapelekwe Hague. Leo yeye ndio atapeleka Hague, hawezi peleka mtu mwingine kama vile alipeleka William Ruto, hawezi peleka mwingine. Hiyo ni kitu tunajua, na lazima tuseme hakuna uchaguzi, tufanye mwezi wa 10 tarehe 26. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Well, honorable members, and I just want to, because I've seen some members who came about 20 minutes ago trying to raise the eyebrows so that they can catch my eye. It's only the leader of the minority party who has priority in speaking, regardless of the time he arrives in the chamber. Leader of majority and leader of minority. You know that. You just have to look at your constitution, Article 108. So it's not anything new I'm saying. The Honorable John Bandi, leader of the minority party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to make my maiden speech as the leader of minority in the 12th Parliament of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I want to also make my contribution to this motion that has been moved pursuant to Standing Order, I think, number 33, regarding matter of national importance and which is urgent. Mr. Speaker, I understand from the contributions in this House that this House has seen it fit to discuss the last general election that took place on August 8th, 2017. Mr. Speaker, I will not overemphasize the fact that Kenyans woke up very early in the morning to queue and vote on that particular day. And actually they did vote. And Mr. Speaker, just before the voting day, this House, together with the Senate, formed a select committee, a joint committee of both houses, which deliberated on a number of amendments to be made to our electoral laws. And these amendments were supposed to cure the perennial problem that this country has been facing regarding rigged elections. And Mr. Speaker, this country saw it fit to discuss that matter because we felt for this country to move forward and for this country to enjoy peace, we need credible, transparent, accountable, verifiable, accurate elections that would stand the test of times. But Mr. Speaker, immediately the elections were conducted. As players in this election, we realized that the elections were not conducted properly. And after the returning officer for the presidential elections announced the winner of the election as Coalition for Reform, NASA Coalition, we came out and disputed. Very peacefully, we disputed the results of that election. And we had reasons which we felt were strong enough to invalidate that election. And immediately we did that, Mr. Speaker, the whole country, led by the President, who was also the presidential candidate of Jubilee, advised NASA a number of times, together with his deputy. And of course, they were joined by the choir that you know, led by Adan Duale, the leader of majority in this house. And we were advised that we should go to court in the event that we were not satisfied. We took the challenge, Mr. Speaker, because we are law-abiding and because we want progress for this country. We said, before even we went to court, that we would want to see a situation where there is no other rigged election in this country. That the last rigged election would be the one that was conducted on 8th of August, 2017. Mr. Speaker, we went to court, even though we were not so confident, because the history of Africa is that there is no country, not even one, not even South Africa, Mr. Speaker, that has witnessed a nullification of a presidential election outcome. Mr. Speaker, we were even advised then that there are only 3 other countries in the world, 3 countries before Kenya, that actually had their elections nullified. And Mr. Speaker, despite that, we respected this supreme law that we passed in 2010. And we went to court, and we presented our evidence. Mr. Speaker, today I hear that it is Raila Odinga who has brought people to where we are. It is not true. The truth is that the re-election of Uhuru Kenyatta, I know it is sometimes very difficult to accept. It is very difficult, even when you lose your wife. When the body is still at the mortuary, you would not even know that your wife is dead. It is very painful. Some of us have gone through this. I want to urge my colleagues, the Jubilee members of Parliament, I know what you feel, but you are feeling exactly what we have been feeling for so many years. Our election has been rigged and stolen a number of times. This country. It is the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya which made a determination. Raila Odinga does not sit in the Supreme Court. It is led by none other than Maraga. And it has eminent lawyers, eminent judges. You look at them, you get impressed. All of them, including even Jokindungu. She's my friend. I have some other reservations. But because she's there, I respect her. This decision was made by the Supreme Court. Instead of making noise, let us see how we can best utilize this opportunity. Kenya has been praised to be the only 4th country in the world to do this. Mr. Speaker, if you are that confident that you won election on 8th of August, what is this anger for? You will still win the election. But I want to ask you to wait. I know you are jittery because you lost this election. That is why you are jittery. And I want to advise those my colleagues who are thinking of taking us back to manual system, that there is a reason. There is a reason why we left the manual system. After the 2007 election, Mr. Speaker, Justice Kriegler came to this country, and after analyzing our electoral system, Mr. Speaker, the decision was arrived at that we need to go electronic. Let us not think backward. Don't take us back to Stone Age period. We have left that period and we are moving forward. And Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude, because I can see my time is up, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that please read Article 37 of the Constitution that gives us an inalienable right to picket, to protest peacefully, which we have been doing. Nobody destroyed anyone's property. It is the police that is violent on us. Please, I want to ask President Uhuru Kenyatta that please hold.
Honourable members, you know, I have chosen to ignore your purported points of orders because in a motion of this nature, only the mover has 10 minutes, and I wanted to remind the clerks, even the leader minority doesn't have more than 5 minutes. Everybody has, any other member speaking, 5 minutes. So instead of, usually, if somebody has only 5 minutes, now a point of order, you will just, and all you want to do is just to say you are disagreeing with what somebody else, and you will have your opportunity to even make your dissent heard. So please, let's just allow people to say what they must say, even if you feel like you would want to puke because of what they say, just hang on, hold on. You'll get your time to also say your bit so that the other person can also feel the same. If they want to do something similar like puking or any such like feelings. The member for Marakwet East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to ventilate into this motion by the little majority. Mr. Speaker, I think as a country we are somehow in problems, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have malgated. And the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, gave many Kenyans, many institutions in Kenya, independent institutions and other government institutions some powers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the same Constitution under Article 1 has given Kenyans the sovereign power, of which Kenyans, in August 8, last month, Mr. Speaker, they went to the ballot and they chose their leaders. All of us, Mr. Speaker, who are seated in this House, we went through the same process. From our MCAs, members of Parliament, the senators and the governors, all of us, we went through the ballot. Mr. Speaker, and a president was chosen also by Kenyans. President Kenyatta was elected by a majority Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. But the same Constitution, Mr. Speaker, under Article 40, gave the Supreme Court the powers again to look into the election and to nullify the elections. Mr. Speaker, that was the right direction. That was the right direction, that whenever anyone is aggrieved or is not contented with anything, you can go to court. Mr. Speaker, as members of Jubilee, we said we didn't agree with the Supreme Court ruling. But because we respect the judiciary and the laws of this country, we will respect and we will go on as per the IBC new date of 26. Mr. Speaker, it is very surprising that the leader of opposition, Raila, then, before after Supreme Court ruling, he actually suggested that the election need to be pushed to that 26th or 23rd. And he even went on to say the children who are supposed to sit, the candidates who are supposed to sit the exams, they were not going to die. And actually, after looking around, the IBC gave that date of 26. Again, the opposition, they are saying they are not going for the elections. They are seeking for caretaker government, which is not there in the Constitution. They are seeking violent protests on the streets. Mr. Speaker, when Badi and the group announced yesterday that they were going for a street demonstration today, Mr. Speaker, there are so many parents who did take their children to school because they were worried. They were not sure what is going to happen. The schools in Kilimani.
I did indicate quite early that many of you had placed requests. So the only way to do is to follow. And the issue of the left of Mr. Speaker or the right of Mr. Speaker mainly applies when you are dealing, when you have the other side properly also arriving in a good time, not like the member for Uguja who arrived 5 minutes to 4. Just for example, because that's the time you arrived. It was 3:55. So I normally take note of what the times that many of, for instance, the Honorable Opio, there's no way you can speak before the Honorable Anyonyi next to you there. You found him there? Yes. So, Honorable Raso, you will have an additional 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And on the onset, I want to say that even the Supreme Court was never in doubt who won the election of 8th August. Clearly, President Kenyatta got 8 million plus, and Honorable Odinga got 6 million. Therefore, what the Supreme Court actually said, it is the process. It is what we are at pains today in our different constituencies to try and explain to Wanjiku, to Mariam, to Guyo, and all others why the Kenyan election of 8 August was invalidated. Mr. Speaker, in this House, the most important document is the Constitution. It is what we saw by in this House. We cannot interpret or read the Constitution selectively in areas where it doesn't favor us, or just read the line that favors our argument. We must interpret or read the Constitution holistically so that we are able, and we are in our positions as legislators, defend the will of our people who have sent us to this House. Mr. Speaker, in Article 1, Subpara 1, all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. One of these is election, that if you want to aspire to a higher office, you go for elections. Or if there are contentious issues, particularly under Article 95 of issues of concern to our people, we can call for a referendum. Mr. Speaker, under Article 38, Bills of Rights, you are allowed to picket, to petition. But one of it, which it doesn't say, is when you want to petition the courts, you go to the courts. But when you want to remove the IBC, you go and picket their offices. I believe if we look at it in breadth and width of it, it is trying to take people out of their legally charged duties through unconstitutional means. It is what this House, in the fullness of time, must start to appreciate. Mr. Speaker, under Article 143 of the Constitution, if the Supreme Court determines the election of the President-elect to be invalid, a fresh election shall be held within 60 days after the determination. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution further provides under Article 142(1), the President shall hold office for a term beginning on the date on which President was sworn in and ending when the person next elected President, in accordance with Article 136(2).
No, you have an extra 2 minutes. We took part of your time. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, if you read Article 140 and 142(1) together, it clearly tells you that even if within 60 days a major calamity happens in Kenya and we are unable to undertake the elections, then it means the current president or President Kenyatta is validly elected and he is in the office without any ambiguity or without any doubt. Mr. Speaker, finally I want to talk about the IBC calling on the UN to assist in the election. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is a sovereign state. A nation state is defined by the boundary, the leadership, its ability to engage in international obligation. If Kenya was unable to undertake that, it means Kenya is a failed state. For that reason, Kenya is not a failed state for an external organ to be involved in our election. I think that in itself is unconstitutional, and this House must assert the position of IBC to carry out election as an independent institution. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it is the presidency. Under Article 131(1), the president is a unifying factor for this nation. Anybody or any individual attempting to undermine that office, it means they are undermining the Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Yatta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to talk as somebody who came here as an independent candidate and as a referee, Mr. Speaker, since I'm neither with Jubilee, nor am I necessarily, although I campaigned for NASA, nor am I being included in their list of members in NASA, although I do support most of the time NASA. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to put it this way, Mr. Speaker, that when you're out there and you're not in government, you talk very differently. When you join government, Mr. Speaker, the language also changes. So my plea, Mr. Speaker, is to remind members, we are members of Parliament, but, Mr. Speaker, not youth wingers of the political party leaders, Mr. Speaker. It is upon us as members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, where we feel the party leaders are not making the right decision for the interest of this country, Mr. Speaker, to speak up, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had had the opportunity to watch both sides of the divide. And, Mr. Speaker, I do recall I saw the team of Jubilee in State House, and there had been Red Riot Act, Mr. Speaker. By the time they left the State House, Mr. Speaker, they were very gloomy. The last time I remember when I was in that government, Mr. Speaker, it was an interaction between the President and members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, little did I know that this Riot Act is being read on both sides, Mr. Speaker. On the other side, Mr. Speaker, they were given a direction, not even to step into the House, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy that Mbandi and the team has come. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament are politicians. The fact that you have been a party leader or the President does not mean these are your cronies and your followers who are supposed to follow you blindly. The challenge you have, Mr. Speaker, is this country is very divided. The reality is so divided that it is so tribal. Even if one side won, they will be ruling almost like 50% of the country. So we need to look ourselves as politicians and bridge that gap. If I'm in Jubilee, how can I be able to convince the other side to believe on my cause? If I'm in NASA, what can I do to convince the other side, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I hear people talking elections cannot be held by UN. It is undemocratic, it's unconstitutional. Where were they when you went to ICC and this House, Mr. Speaker, rejected the local courts? If you are convinced you can win the election, it matters not who is in charge of the election. My plea, Mr. Speaker, is we have to think outside the box. And we members of Parliament, whether you're in NASA or Jubilee, we must convince the leaders. Because if you look at those Wazir's, they have done their time. What if we destroy the country? What if we went to a civil war, Mr. Speaker? So it is us, upon members of Parliament, to come to the middle ground, bring both sides on the table. What are the key issues we are talking about, Mr. Speaker? Because we don't want a situation where, Mr. Speaker, we have elections and then we have no country. I want to give you an example, Mr. Speaker. I went for a funeral at my constituency, and I said, Mr. Speaker, I do market my cause. I was marketing my NASA. And after I left the funeral, the deputy governor went there. He spoke very well, but he made one blunder. He mentioned Uhuru, just mentioned. And that was the end of the funeral. Is that the country we are talking about, Mr. Speaker? Where you have a head of state is not recognizing certain parts of the country. If you're a friend of the president, you need to tell him the truth. Certain parts of this country are so hostile, actually they don't even recognize him as a head of state. If you're a friend of his, I know I talk to him. If I had the opportunity to talk to him, I would tell him, change your tack. Mr. Speaker, we as members of Parliament have lowered our standards even too low. Tumekuwa watu wa matusi, Mr. Speaker. You see a whole member of parliament, whatever comes out of his mouth, Mr. Speaker, is not honorable. And it is both sides. And all of a sudden, the more you abuse the other side, the more you become famous, Mr. Speaker. It is shameful, Mr. Speaker. There's nothing honorable abusing a head of state. And I saw it here, Mr. Speaker. I remember 10th Parliament swearing in one member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, who was called Ababu Namamba. He refused to recognize the head of state. What happened many years later? Is it not with the head of state? Mr. Speaker, times change. Politics change. Don't abuse somebody so that in a way that, Mr. Speaker, in future, you are sworn enemies. Remember, times change. Mr. Speaker, that I feel, Mr. Speaker, we have a responsibility as politicians to stand up as politicians.
Member for Malava.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, from where I stand, I would really urge our senior brother Raila really to accept and proceed with the elections. Because I believe at one time when the results were declared, he did not have any faith in the Supreme Court. But you see, I think his colleagues, his friends urged him to proceed. And you see, the Supreme Court finally actually gave him the reward he wanted. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see why he still has no faith in this particular commission, IBC. I believe if he comes on board and accepts as it is, we proceed to the elections, you can never tell. Maybe he can also have his way, the way he had his way in the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, what is surprising me, and what I would like to inform Kenyans, wherever they are, our senior brother Raila, he has lost so many times, 4 times. And every time he loses, he blames, he does not accept the results. Why is this the case? Then when he has refused to accept the results, he now blames the referee. This time, yes, he blamed the referee. It went to the Supreme Court, and the ruling was made. And fortunately, the ruling kind of stated that it wasn't the referee per se who was the problem, the persons who are manning this particular process who are the problem. It was ruled that it was the system itself that had a problem. And in my own language, I would imagine here were drivers or a driver of a vehicle. The vehicle crashed. When the mechanic looked at it, he realized that this vehicle crashing, it wasn't the problem of the driver. It was the vehicle itself. So we in this kind of set where I would urge our brother Raila, but you see the problem is not Chebukati. The problem is not Chiloba. We should accept these brothers to proceed with the process of these elections so as to actually have stability and peace in our country. And I'm just wondering, at one time when the head of state was complaining about Supreme Court, mentioning also our brother Maraga, he had run all the way to Kisii. He said, inciting the Kisii persons, that look, here your own son is being crucified. I'm now wondering why him is crucifying. I come from western part of Kenya. Him.
What I think. There's a microphone next to you. In the National Assembly, things are a bit faster.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
She is a distinguished member for Bomet, the district member for Bomet, distinct lady, former deputy speaker of the Bomet County Assembly.
Honorable Speaker, I don't belong to Kanu Party, but the Jubilee Party. Honorable Speaker, I've stood to support the motion that has been brought forward by the leader of majority on the issue of urgent national importance. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that, Honorable Speaker, we've been having a lot of problems after the 8th date of election, Honorable Speaker. The reason why I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, is because, Honorable Speaker, we did an election. A number of us won. The issues that has been raised by the opposition party, that is the NASA team, have been alleging, Honorable Speaker, that after invalidation of the presidential election is that the IEPC should be removed. The other said, honorable members, who are in this house, Honorable Speaker, their elections was done by the IEPC. Yet they are still complaining, Honorable Speaker, that the IEPC was not competent. If the same commission is the commission which stood during our elections, Honorable Speaker, how then can the honorable members who belong to the opposition party in this house allege that the same body has done or is illegal, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, we've been facing a lot of challenges. They have been having a lot of complaints from the debt, the issue of procurement of the presidential ballot papers. Right now, they are also complaining about members of the IPC. The other day, today, I understand, Honorable Speaker, they are complaining of the Safaricom trying to rig elections. Honorable Speaker, the date has been set. And I want to remind this country that the monies that we are using for these re-elections are the monies that comes from taxpayers. These monies are supposed to be used in terms of development. There is no legal issues that they have raised pertaining the date that has been set, the 26th. But Honorable Speaker, they have kept shifting the goalpost, raising a lot of issues which are baseless, to an extent, Honorable Speaker, that they are trying to threaten the security of this country. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that enough is enough. We have a government in place, and whether the team is willing to call for elections or not, we will still remain with the President, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, as the President of this Republic of Kenya. The business of the country will continue. I know there are some few things under legal basis pertaining the issues of appointment and what have you. But I want to say, we can still run this country without even those appointments and even without the opposition party. Honorable Speaker, I also want to say this, that we are fed up with a lot of insults that the honorable members are making. We are also equal to the task. If it means insulting, we are also very ready. We've come to this house not through prayers, but through politics. And I want to say that, Honorable Speaker,
Member for Tharaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is good that this afternoon we are debating this very serious matter as regards the motion of adjournment and what exactly is taking place in the country. It is also important to let the country know what those in the minority are contemplating, because we believe there are certain straws they are clinging to, so that at the end of the day, they do challenge the election we are to have on the 26th of September. First and foremost, there have been pronouncements from the NASA coalition that in accordance with the law, there will be no election on the 26th of October unless their conditionalities are met. We wish to state, and I wish to submit, that in accordance with the Constitution, it is not possible for there to be an interregnum or a vacuum if there is no election on the 26th of October. The position is that
basically say that the NASA leadership, who are senior officials in this country, are misleading Kenyans by trying to tell them that it is possible for us not to have an election as specified, and we are peace-loving people. There is no way people can say they are peace-loving, and then they lead people into the street to protest on nothing, on lies. Mr. Speaker, Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, basically says that any attempt to establish a government in any other means, otherwise in other words, other than in compliance with the Constitution, is unlawful. What we are seeing and the kind of activities we are seeing, our friends in the opposition or in the minority, they are trying to come up with imagination that it is possible to create a government in this country through using other means. They are trying to imagine that there's a likelihood to have a constitutional crisis after 60 days. Mr. Speaker, I would like to clearly tell Kenyans that that is not possible. Mr. Speaker, I would like us to, at some point in time within this House, to relook into the election laws, even to look for possibilities of evaluating this Constitution. It might be necessary for us to even look at what our friends and neighbors have in terms of electoral laws and their provisions within their Constitution. I want to specifically refer
Special Interest David Olesankok. And I want to encourage some of you members, please, because I know you have cards, just learn how to use them. There's an area for interventions and an area for normal contribution requests. Because I've seen some members who put their cards in the intervention box, like the member for Muranga, who should not be doing that kind of mistake, but chose to do it. So I assume that you wanted to intervene something. Honorable Sankok.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is very good for us, first of all, to know our country very well. Kenya is the most democratic country in Africa. Having had 4 successful presidents who have been democratically elected by the people of Kenya. 2 of them are in retirement at home, enjoying their retirement without any interference. Kenya have been very democratic. Kenya is a country that loves peace. We only have one problem in Kenya, and that problem is the name of one man by the name Raila Amolo Odinga, Tinga, Tractor, Bila Mafuta, Agwambo, Baba, Joshua Bandia. This man was named in 1982 during the coup. That was a problem. In 2007, he used the bridge of dead bodies to get to the leadership of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we speak now, there are people who are on the streets. And I want you, Mr. Speaker, sir, to protect me from members of the NASA coalition who are there picketing, have been extended to this house. I am on the floor and I'm protected by the Speaker. So hold your horses until you get your time. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me remind them that you may hold demonstration, but remember that this country is a country that is governed by the rule of law, and every citizen of this country needs protection. You need protection of picketing and demonstration. The constitutional office holders also need their protection by the law. They are protected by the law. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a shame that leaders continue calling for demonstration and disturbing the peace and stability of this country that have been there since the time we got independence. And they are not ashamed of themselves even when they continue picketing, even inside this house. Mr. Speaker, sir, we would like to say categorically that even our police officers are protected by the law. And when people picket and pretend to hold peaceful elections, a peaceful demonstration, and they go into demonstration with stones, we'll request our police officers to use only rubber bullets, where also those who are demonstrating have rubber stones. Mr. Speaker, sir, this country have no vacuum. We have a sitting president, and there will be no vacuum at any particular moment. The law is very clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Very well. Let's have the member for Gishugu, Honorable Kashimu Githinji.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
And by the way, as you have your time there, Honorable Ouda, I see there is an intervention from that direction. Is he in the house? Okay, proceed. I see also Honorable Mwale Tindi. Does he want to intervene? You want to intervene or you want to contribute? To intervene. What is is it a point of order? I mean, he's not even started speaking. Honorable member for Ishugu, let me hear what Honorable Tindi wants to say. Then I give you the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of intervention is I want to correct my friend, the honorable member.
Honorable?
The honorable member for special interest. I want to correct him. This is our honorable house, and the right honorable Raila Odinga has some small respect. So please, when you're addressing the right honorable Raila Odinga, have some sense of respect.
Honorable Tindi will be heard in silence. By the way, you know we are still in the learning process, even if we went through a very rigorous exercise last week. But Honorable Tindi, that's not how to do it. You have done it almost correctly, but slightly after the ship has left the dock. So you have been heard, of course, but that's not how to do it. But that is fine. I think you have put your something on record.
Nevertheless, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Proceed, member for Gishugu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wish to support the motion. And firstly, I would like to say this Kenya is for all of us. Kenya is bigger than any person or any coalition of parties. And first of all, I would like to make a correction against our unworthy opponents from the minority side, that actually let them not go around cheating Kenyans, that the president is devoid of some powers. Temporary incumbency appears or occurs only where from the date of the first vote in a presidential election and between the time a new president assumes office. And upon the declaration of the presidential elections as void and null and void, then it appears that there were no elections in that case, and actually the president assumes or assumed all the powers that are bestowed and given by the Constitution. So that is a clarification that all Kenyans should not be cheated around by our opponents. But having said so, the elections of this country can only be done by the independent boundaries and electoral commission. And that independence is given under Article 249 of the Constitution, whereby one of the obligations of that independent commission is to protect the sovereignty of the people of Kenya. The second thing is to promote constitutionalism. And when the opponents or the opposition is going to try and remove that commission or its members from the office, it is actually violating the Constitution. That cannot be accepted. We are a sovereign state. We are people, and we have a president who obeys the Constitution. So we will ask and request, as the people who are on the government side, the Jubilee side, that the government should take all the necessary forces to protect the lives, the property, and everything that belongs to Kenyans, so that Kenyans can be able to move forward. The other thing is, Mr. Speaker, I would think that members who are very abusive should not be called honorable members. Because when you abuse a head of state in public, and someone who is not even half the age of the president, surely we are missing a point. And I believe the people that that honorable, because now we are in the House, I may have to refer him as such, they should know that he owes them an apology. And he owes the whole country an apology, and the Jubilee wing, if the opposition is comfortable with those kind of utterances and abuses, let it be, but that should not be carried to this House. Let us behave with decorum, honorable members. This country is ours, and for those who are demonstrating, let them know that there is a line that they cannot cross. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Again, I see members keep intervening, but let's see, Honorable Member for Kiminini. And Honorable Uda, where are you in the House? Where? Because you keep intervening and going the other direction, I really would want to know what you... Well, proceed, the Honorable Member for Kiminini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 95 of the Constitution is very clear that this House can deliberate and resolve on any issue of national importance. And today, Mr. Speaker, as we debate on this motion of adjournment, I want to call upon both sides of the divide, Mr. Speaker, that we have a nation that we must guard, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to borrow the words of one transformative leader, Martin Luther King Jr. He said this, Mr. Speaker, that we better learn to live together as brothers, or we perish together as fools. Mr. Speaker, whether you are in NASA, whether in Jubilee, the elections must be credible, free and fair, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 140 of the Constitution is very clear in terms of validity of presidential results. And it outlines clearly that you petition Supreme Court, and whatever the decision that Supreme Court decides, Mr. Speaker, it is final. Mr. Speaker, I'm from the NASA coalition side, and indeed, our side were not ready to go back to the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker. I had just come from Vatican, Mr. Speaker. I went to pray, and I prayed for this nation. And when I came back, Mr. Speaker, when you were in our PG of NASA, I rose and I said, with the glaring evidence that we have, let's go to the Supreme Court. And the decision was made, Mr. Speaker. And from the Jubilee side, they made it very clear that if you are not comfortable, please go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made a decision, and it's important for our colleagues to know that whatever the decision was made, it is final. Mr. Speaker, the results, the process was fraudulent. Obviously, if the process is fraudulent, Mr. Speaker, the output is fraudulent. I listened keenly, Mr. Speaker, in court. And it was asked, what were those things, results we were seeing on TV? And one counsel, lawyer Nyamodi, said that those were not results. What were they? It was statistics, it was data. We've seen from this, KIMS and the servers were never opened, Mr. Speaker, as per the directive of the Supreme Court. It would have been a very good opportunity, Mr. Speaker, if the servers were opened. Then IBC will have discredited whatever our side was saying, Mr. Speaker. And now we are going for the elections on 26, Mr. Speaker. The elections, voting started before 8th. Even after the results had been declared, Mr. Speaker, when you go to the servers, you could see that the results were still counting. This is to tell you there was something wrong within that process. And for us to move to be assured of free and fair elections, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we must have a level playing ground, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, it's useless if we go back, and yet the ICT system has not been corrected. Mr. Speaker, as we debate here today, we have nowhere to go, as I said earlier, whether you are coming from Jubilee or whether you are coming from NASA. Under Article 37 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, every citizen has a right to picket and to demonstrate. As NASA, we are demonstrating today, picketing today. But anyone may be a criminal, whatever the case, the police is there to take charge of that, Mr. Speaker. And as per Article 37 of the Constitution, there's no way you ask for permission from the police for purposes of picketing. You are only there to notify them so that they are there to provide security. And for those people who want to reap where they never sow, the law must take its action. As NASA, we stand for peaceful demonstrations, peaceful picketing, as outlined in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. We want to know who is going to be our president of this country. Mr. Speaker, if you are the president, you are not the president of Jubilee or the president of NASA. And I want to say this. The Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, he wants free and fair elections. He does not want, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't want half loaf. I want to assure you, if we win, we want a full loaf, and we'll take care of Jubilee. And we are going to ensure that whatever is going to take place must be within the law, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, if we are going to have elections that's outside the law, we go back, Maraga is still there, Mr. Speaker. And remember, the greatness of our nation, Mr. Speaker, lies in its fidelity to the Constitution and strict adherence to the rule of law. And above all, the fear of God. We fear God, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to go.
Let's have Honorable Sunkuya, member for Kajiado West. And by the way, honorable members, especially the new ones, if you have not contributed before and therefore you are making your maiden speech, always make sure you declare so that you can get protection from the speaker in terms of no interruption. Let's proceed. So, Honorable Sunkuya, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Leader of the Majority for bringing this motion. Protect me, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that Kenya is more important than anybody else. It is good for us to respect Kenya, to unite Kenya. As leaders, we have responsibility in every leader to unite Kenya. Peace is paramount to this country. I want to tell my brothers from the NASA coalition that we know the history of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. We know the history of their family. We know since 1967, when they were given or appointed by the President Amoy as the Vice President. He ran for Kenyatta. He ran away for the seat. What happened in 1982? The coup for Honorable Raila Odinga. What happened in 1992 during the multi-party period. What happened? What happened in the 1992? What happened in 1997? Honorable Raila Odinga was only happy during 2002 when actually he confused the Honorable Mwai Kibaki to say Kibaki Tosha. And within very few years, come 2005, he even tried actually to bring coup to Kenya. What happened in 2007? He was only comfortable when he was given a half loaf of a bread.
Honorable other members, now I see quite a number of members pressing intervention key. Honorable Odhiambo Ochieng, is there anything that what is it?
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you. I just wanted to remind the honorable member.
No two members will stand at the same time. So please resume your seat, Honorable Sunkuya. You will get an additional 30 seconds.
I just wanted to remind the honorable member that without Raila Amolo Odinga, Kibaki would never have been a president in 2002. I want to repeat.
You know, Honorable Elisha Ochieng.
I'm exercising my...
I am not able to follow you under what standing order you are rising on, because if it's a point of order, you should specify. And really, what you are saying does not qualify to be that. But luckily, at least you have put your name somewhere. You know, it's good. I mean, we are in the learning process, so we cannot be very too difficult. But members must learn quickly that when you rise on a point of order, it should be specific to a particular point of order. And therefore, when you prosecute it, we are able to be up to speed with you.
Mr. Speaker, sir,
I think you have made your point, Honorable Elisha. You will have your time to speak. Then you can bring all those issues, because at that point in time, for as long as you are relevant, you will have your time. Yes. So let's proceed, Honorable Sunkuya, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Atuma, I just wanted to say that it's good for the side of the NASA coalition. Kindly get ready for the election on 26th October, because Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, our side, the Jubilee, we are ready for this. We are ready for this. Get ready, because you seem to be not ready. You called for a demonstration today. You are allowed for the demonstration. What is happening outside? People who are there were naked. They were naked. The Honorable Prime Minister was sitting on the road. A leader we are expecting tomorrow, expecting himself to win an election. He is also on the demonstration and sitting on the road. It is very dangerous. Our children of Kenya are watching. They are watching us. I would like to say that it is important to unite this country. Let us work as one team. Let us preach peace, because it is paramount to this country. I beg to move.
Honorable members, the person top on the list here is Honorable Kimunya Muhiga, member for Kipipiri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. At last I'm enabled. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. We are in difficult times as a nation, and I would have wished my friend, Honorable Buddy, would have been here, because
I would have wanted to congratulate him in person, him and his team, including Honorable Amalwa, because they now in a house and are participating in this house, despite the rather misguided advisory that they received from their leaders to keep away from this house. And I'm sure they've now realized it's time to liberate themselves from domination by a few people who are fast fading away into oblivion. Mr. Speaker, 10 years ago, we played politics, and we all know the consequences of that playing around with the minds of Kenyans, playing politics with the elections. And it's a time we all wish we would never have to think of or get back to. We agreed to reform, and through a lot of efforts from several people, we came up with a new constitution, and we set out what we need to do so that we never end up going back to the issues that we went to in 2007. And one of that was respect for institutions. And I'm very disturbed when I see colleagues who partly took us there in the first place in 2007, took us out as we engaged, trying to get us there through the disrespect for institutions and for engaging in what could only be considered, Mr. Speaker, for want of a better term, I'm not sure whether it's parliamentary or not, some primitive street sideshows, because what we saw today cannot be in any way be described as silent, as peaceful protests in accordance with our laws, in accordance with the Constitution. Damage to people's property, threatening peace and security in the country, threatening school children getting out of school, disrupting the economic base of our country, and all those issues brought together cannot, by any imagination, amount to peaceful protest. And I wish to ask colleagues that yes, there may be issues. The first advisory was go to court. The court ruled. We respected the decision of the court. The court said, let's go for elections. Let IEBC conduct the elections. We're waiting for those elections. And I would like to ask that we go through those formal processes. We use the formal frameworks that have been set up within our laws, including a discussion through this House. And I'm very encouraged to hear the discussions from Honorable Badi, from Honorable Malwa, and others taking part within the House so that we can start engaging and looking at what is the best solution we have for this country, rather than going out into the streets and threatening. Granted, some of those people leading others to the streets do not have the opportunity to be in this House, but that's no excuse for them leading others to go to the streets, yet we could actually come and engage together. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe together we can come up with some common solutions. Kenya is our country. We live in this country. We love this country. We don't have anywhere else to go. And I do believe that sitting together from the majority side, from the minority side, we can come up with solutions that will take this country forward as we achieve our bigger dream, as our big aspirations within the frameworks of Vision 2030. Mr. Speaker, I also want to ask for restraint from both sides. Like I said, we were here in this same country. We were here in this same house 10 years ago. And it's the statements that were made in the political rallies, it's the threats that were made within the political frameworks that ended up inciting our people. And guys took, machetes, pangas, and all those other crude weapons against one another. And we saw where we went. Let us exercise restraint. And let us know that long after we are gone, Kenya is still needed for our children and our grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, with those words, I beg to support.
Very well. Clearly, that's not the Amos Kimunya who used to be here a few years ago. Things, times change. Now, let me give an opportunity to member for South Mugirango.
Thank you very much. I'll want to seek your protection, Mr. Speaker, because I think I'll start by giving my maiden speech to appreciate the people of South Mugirango for having faith in me, despite the challenges of clanism that is so prone in our constituency. They felt that I was best fit for this position. And now to this House, Mr. Speaker, we have a calling together, both NASA and Jubilee, that we need to set aside our political angers and our inclinations, because it's indeed true that at this moment we are making hasty decisions based on our political affiliations, with a lot of anger behind, of course, because of recent happenings. But, Mr. Speaker, it's very important for honorable members to realize that we have a country to protect. And as a country, we need to know that despite the current circumstances, we shouldn't be making decisions that befit us at this particular moment. That you need to push electoral laws, probably that benefit us at this moment, forgetting that tomorrow you'll also be seeking to run for that top seat. And if those laws do not, really, if those laws are not right at that particular moment, they'll still affect you. So the honorable members should understand that. On the issue of us talking in public rallies and probably on insults, Mr. Speaker, I've noted with a lot of concern as a new member of parliament that this war of words is in both political coalitions. Response. We are learning from the best. Some of us who are young legislators, we look upon the top leadership of this country. There are times, even in as much as we choose to silence the young members of parliament who insult the presidency, you also need to look at the other side, that even the president himself should also try and also be calm at times and cool his anger. When head of state calls the learned judges, Wakora, network and stuff like that, that shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be happening completely. The response, yes, Wakora, it shouldn't be happening. That is a top institution. It's an institution, it's actually an arm of government that should be respected, and that is the Supreme Court. So clearly, we need to be learning that some of these statements that you hear even from both political sides is because of the anger that people are having. The honorable member for Gatundu South, for instance, one time made a very wrong move. I mean, he said that Wembe ni ule ule. And then he claimed that he'll use that Wembe, on the Honorable Raila Odinga and his wife. I mean, how do you do that? Then the young legislators are learning also from that, because they feel probably when you do this, that is the order of the day. So I call upon the honorable members in this house that in as much as we want to tame the young legislators or the people who come to this house as new people, as new members, we should limit our insults. Just like the honorable member.
The member will not be interrupted, Honorable Jomo, and you are an old hand yourself. He's on his maiden speech. So please don't interrupt him. Proceed.
We want to humble ourselves to learn. We want to humble ourselves to learn from our senior honorable members in this house. But also, we are noting that there is little to learn from some members, especially from the Jubilee coalition, who are so insultive, very insultive, but there is nothing that can be done to them. Mr. Speaker, we've also had one member talk about demonstrations, which of course are right under Article 37. Condemning the NASA demonstrations that happened today. But Mr. Speaker, we should also note that the demonstrations happened in Kiambu under the watchful eyes of the police. They were not tear-gassed. Why tear-gas the NASA demonstrators? Why tear-gas them? Mr. Speaker, all I'm calling is calmness among us both members, and whatever you are challenging on the other house, challenge it also here. When you are challenging, challenge both NASA and Jubilee. If you call...
Very well, you've just lost it now. You don't have another maiden speech. Now, I will exercise my powers under standing order number 1. I realize the other gender has not spoken for quite some time, and therefore The topmost on the list is 6th, and that is the women member, county women representative for Muranga. It's number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for recognizing gender in this House. Mr. Speaker, on the onset, I want to say, as the women of this nation, we are very disappointed by the words of the young Member of Parliament for Embakasi, who decided, Mr. Speaker, to abuse His Excellency the President, and in connection abused his mother. Mr. Speaker, we are very disappointed, and I want to say on onset here, Mr. Speaker, that I think we should start disciplining ourselves. And for the honorable member, though the law has taken its course, when it comes to this House, we as a women, especially on the Jubilee side, will deal with him. Mr. Speaker, secondly, I would also like to say that yesterday, the business community of this town came out and gave up their voice. And Mr. Speaker, they said they need the business to go on. And today it's unfortunate that I've seen the other side saying that there is Mungiki in this town. And I would like to say that we will not accept our young people, our business people to be called names. Mr. Speaker, being a business person doesn't mean that one is Mungiki. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to condemn the way we have started grouping our people in this country. And I'll also say that, Mr. Speaker, NASA will not have their cake and eat it. They went to court to complain about the presidential elections. The court gave them what they asked for the repeat of elections in this nation. And all we are waiting for is on 26, where the Kenyans will exercise once again their power and confirm that they had elected Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta as the president. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate to hear the same people who went to court now saying they are not ready to go to the polls because they want to give their conditions. Mr. Speaker, it is important for the NASA team to realize that when they went to court, they did not give court the conditions on how they wanted the judgment to be written unless they are the ones who were to write that judgment. And so it will be good for them to respect the law and to follow the instructions and directions from the court. Mr. Speaker, it is also unfortunate that, and I want to make this as a personal statement, that I did not, as a member for Muranga, say that I'll undress and go to Embakasi. And I think the Committee on Communication, we should start looking at the use of social media, and the originators of such messages action should be taken, Mr. Speaker. And so it was also very unfortunate for me to see women undressing in this town in the name of demonstration. And it's also unfortunate, even when they were celebrating, we saw some young men in their underwears and some ladies in their bras, which is quite a shame, Mr. Speaker. We need to know we are meant to mentor our children on the values of this nation, and it's unfortunate when we see such kind of behavior. And Mr. Speaker, we have lost a lot of money in terms of the investment that were to come to Kenya, in terms of businesses, and all we are waiting as a nation is to go to the election and so that we can move on. We have lost, again, around 14 billion for going back to the elections again. And Mr. Speaker, if both sides are genuine, let us honor Kenyans, let us go back to the elections and elect the president of this nation. And just to say that we have no vacuum. I think when the judgment declared that the elections were null and void, it was confirmed that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is the president. And for the doubting Thomases, he has all the powers as a president until we go to the elections. And for the ones who are threatening, they are not interested to go to the elections, Mr. Speaker. It is a high time we tell them this House is ready, and we are also ready to change some of the laws that made us go back to court and that went and questioned on the processes, Mr. Speaker, where we know the famous Wajiko went and casted their vote. They were not interested whether that vote was carried with a border or with a donkey, but they know they exercise their right. And the best thing we can do as this House is to go the German way, Mr. Speaker, and go back to manual where one casts their vote and people can wait at the polling station, they do the total count, and finally, Mr. Speaker, we'll know who will be the president of this nation. We pray for peace for the nation, Mr. Speaker, and I want to ask the women of this nation to wake up. Let us discipline our children, including one, Babu Owino. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, and I have actually had to call a member here to show that particular member how we are trying to balance. Because because sometimes it's not simply just being number one. Like for example, now top on the list is a member for Kangema, Kiharu, sorry, top on the list, but I'm not giving him. Because what we need to do sometimes is we need to balance also between parties, regions, gender, as you've just seen. So you will speak next, but first, I'll give a member from NASA, and that is Honorable Atandi Anunga. And that is just for, I'm just trying to show members that sometimes it's not as easy as you coming and seeing yourself being on the top, because there is a lot of balancing to be done. We have to have a balanced house.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this is my first time to speak in these chambers, and I would like to say that, Mr. Speaker, before I joined politics, I was a leading professional in the financial services sector, and when I told my colleagues that I was resigning to come to Parliament, most of my colleagues disagreed with me and said that Parliament was a discredited organization, that a serious professional like myself was not suitable to join. And Mr. Speaker, I disagreed with all of them, and I went ahead to campaign, and this is the reason why I'm here today. Firstly, let me take this opportunity to thank the great people of Alego Usonga for voting me overwhelmingly as their member of Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons my colleagues told me for disapproving my interest to join politics was the fact that this House was notorious for only finding consensus on items that were sectarian and those items that were serving their personal interests. And so this afternoon, when this motion was brought before us to discuss the Supreme Court or the IEBC issues around presently being canvassed nationally, I began to think about, to reflect about my colleagues'